Thank you. So I didn't understand what she said, but thank you for being here. Is this okay? Okay. So, as you may know, I had quite a busy year. Last year in May, I started selling a self-published book that was called The Afronauts. And then a new period in my life started because everything completely changed. So I've been asking myself many times what happened, because also a lot of people ask me what happened and how this happened. So I've been trying to find answers and why this happened. And I'm going to try to, well, I think I understand better now what happened. And to explain you what happened, I need to maybe go back, because there's a reason why I decided to do a book, and there's a reason why I decided to do it this way. But I'm really going to go fast, because it's not something that is important in a way. Well, I started being a photojournalist. I've been working with newspapers as a staff photographer and also as a freelancer for almost 10 years. So my primary interest in photography came from drawing. I did fine art schools, concentration on drawing, and I wanted to have a catalog of images to draw afterwards, like chairs and houses and things like that. And so that's how I discovered photography, and that's how I started taking pictures. Then I fell in love with the dark room, etc. I think like all photographers, and decided and started appreciating the magic of photography and recognizing the potential it has. So when I finished my art school, I realized that I didn't understand what contemporary artists were saying. I just don't get it. I think art is just like an elaborate form of communication, but if you miss the message, if you don't understand what they're saying, it's just a wrong way of communication. It's not valid for me anymore. So after the art school, that is very theoretical and so on, I didn't feel I could be an artist. And I still loved photography, I still loved the medium, so I decided to do something useful with photography, and the best choice for me at the time was becoming a photojournalist. So I did 1 more year training as a photojournalist in a university in Barcelona. And then I started a crusade to start collaborating with medias, with magazines, and with newspapers. I started being a photojournalist in Ibiza. It's a small island, not much going on in winter, but a lot going on in the summer season. And that was actually a very good training in terms of how you approach people. I used to be a very shy person. How you approach, how you work quick. It was like going to the gym 8 hours every day, and then you're in very good shapes in terms of how you move with the camera and how you actually interact with people. So it was a very, very, very extremely good training. But at some point, I've always needed to believe in what I do. I am very passionate about what I do. If I don't believe about what I do, it's wrong. I'm not happy, and I am depressed. So after some time working in newspapers, I realized that it's not really working, that the image doesn't have an effect, the effect I hoped it had. I wanted my images, or not only mine, but the rest, well, photojournalism, to raise awareness on humanitarian issues, on world issues, but being part of the machinery, or being part of the media, I understood that it was not really happening, that the image, the photojournalistic image, is not just an illustration. We're getting used to it, and it doesn't have this empathy that I think is needed to change things. So it was just like an illustration, like another form of art that just comes with the text and doesn't change really anything. So these are the images I used to do for NGOs. I just see like discovering what I like it in terms of language and so on. But yes, I didn't believe in what I was saying, what I was doing. So out of this frustration, I started when I was doing, working as a photojournalist and a staff photographer at the newspaper in Spain, in Alicante. I started doing my own version of reality every day. It was really frustrating because I didn't understand what I was working on. It was actually quite a hard job. And for example, in the news, you have this cyclic thing that happens, like every day. For example, I used to work in Alicante, and for example, every year in August or at the beginning of July, lots of immigrants that are based in France drive through Spain and they take a ferry to go back to Algeria. So every year I had to go there because my newspaper asked me to do that. Go there and take the picture of the Algerian family with a car, you know, like lots of things on the top of the car. And there's the woman under the sun, the Red Cross giving water, and the husband with other friends smoking and with the baby, you know, like the typical image. And every day it was the same. Every year it was the same. So you're actually denouncing something. This is bad. They have no shelter. Let's change. But nothing happens. It was, I did that 5 times. So at some point, if you are honest with yourself, you say, okay, I can't believe that. I mean, I can be a cynical. So I started doing my own versions of reality and doing with this blog that I started in 2006, my own newspaper. So this is what I did for the same subject that same day. So it's actually, now I like going back to the blog and seeing how actually how I developed, because it's all there. It's all, like all my research and all the things that I was trying is all there. So this is my version of what happened that day when all the families were waiting to get the ferry. This is my version of bullfighting. I did a training as a war photographer because I wanted to be a war photographer, and I've been in a couple of conflicts. I've been in Syria, well, conflicts, in Haiti, and in other like difficult countries, and it was really one of the most stupid things I've done in my life, this training, by far. It was like men playing soldiers, like really, but seriously, and it was in the middle of, I don't know, near Madrid, and they were like really, like G.I. Joe things, that, amazing. And I was so shocked by that I did my version also. This is all the religious celebrations in Spain. And also that's how I started pushing myself to see how far I could go with photography in terms of like beating my shyness and getting over it. So I was really pushing myself. Like all the things that I would never do, you do it systematically every day, just because you don't want to do it, you just do it. So it was kind of a Shaolin training for me. And where am I? Here. So this is on a train, following people. I started following people. At some point, Ricardo Cases, who's a good friend of mine, he sent me, oh, you should see this photographer. And he sent me a link to the work of Paul Graham. And I was, oh, this guy is copying me. And actually, it's not, because I started doing this. This is, for example, one day, you know, in Spain we have like soccer, bullfighting, and another national sport is corrupted politicians. So I spend a lot of time as a photojournalist waiting outside the police station for politicians, just to have a picture of someone that I had portraits, tons of portraits of him posing, but he was like covering himself with something because he didn't want to be in the picture. So imagine like you spend 8 hours under the rain, now I'm dramatizing, under the rain with lots of journalists, just to take an image, a blurred image of someone covering himself. You don't recognize the place, but that's the picture they want. And it really made no sense for me. And it's like, why are all these people, why are we all waiting for this picture that has no value at all other than the document? So I started to balance that, following people that nobody wanted to see. For example, in Spain we have the gypsies that sell roses. And this is like quite an embarrassing thing that happens if she comes to you. Because if you don't buy the rose, then she puts a spell on you, and then it's like, ugh. And so you don't want to talk to her, you don't want to interact, but at the same time, if she's there, you need to buy the rose, because then otherwise bad luck, really bad luck can happen. So I started following her as if she was a celebrity, and I did that for quite a while. Can I ask you something? Yes, of course. Did she know you were photographing? No. No. 60. No, but that was like sort of the train. Then I talked to her. I know her. After some time, I've been working in that city for almost 6 years. So, and we know, I mean, I've been taking portraits of her like real, she knows me. Like also, like for example, when you see someone dressed weirdly and you don't dare to watch, you're like, oh, but you're so shy, and so, I mean, it's not good to watch someone that is funnily dressed. So I just started following her, getting all the reactions from people, and then, yes, I sometimes stop them and ask them to take a portrait. Then also, like, funny things, I think I want to explore sense of humor with photography, that I think is something necessary. Like this is a very famous hotel in Madrid, and it's called Mediodía, which means midday. But then depending on where you put yourself, you have this public light in the middle, and it becomes Me odia, which means he hates me. So it was these kind of funny things that I used to post in my blog. And yes, and other things, like I realized at some point that the real document, the truthful document, was documenting your opinion. And before you can have an opinion, you need to have an experience. So I stopped understanding why they send photojournalists to foreign countries to document in 2 weeks the reality that they don't know. And I started really not understanding what my work was about. So out of this came like a strong worry for what is the documentary value of photography, how you can actually play with that, and how people tend by default to believe what the photography says without questioning. I mean, it works now like a visual dictionary, like you see any magazine and you see an advertising, you know the message is buy this shampoo or buy this car. In the same way, you see a picture of Africa with a poor, starving kid, and you say, oh, Africa is poor. And you know, you get these simplified messages that are very strongly attached to the image, because we've reduced things to such a simple way of communicating things. We don't engage the audience anymore in having their own opinion. We just like give everything chewed and digested for them. So I really wanted to raise a debate on that and create work that could question that and that could force people to, yes, the internal debate, is this true, is this not true? And well, one of the other things I had been doing, I started doing when I was frustrated with my work as a photojournalist, is collecting, well, these things that nobody wants, and then I do completely the opposite, and that's the result of this. It was actually the first time that I experienced with playing with the documentary value photography and how people react to photography. And you know, you receive spam mails. I used to receive a lot. And well, I started collecting them, and at some point a gallery in Spain asked me to give a proposal for a festival. It's called Foto España. And I decided to make a selection out of these spam mails and do the portraits of the person who apparently, according to them, exists behind this mail. So this is a Russian widow. It was very funny for me because I actually started working something that is very interesting for me still now, that is the relation between the text and the image. How when you read, you're actually using your memories to, for example, if you read a book and there is a description of a landscape of a character, you just use your own memories and you actually use someone that reminds you of the description you just read as a character in that sort of movie that you're viewing when you read. So it's something that also interests me. So it was kind of fun of, like, you read the text, I read the spam, and I close my eyes and say, how do I imagine this person is? And out of this image that I create, I build it. So you can see this in my website. I don't want to make it very long because I really want to go to the astronauts and explain some details and what is coming next. But the funny thing is that that was my first non-documentary project, and it was shown in a festival, in an art gallery, and a lot of people came to me and asked me, oh, Cristina, this is an amazing job. I mean, how did you get in contact with these people? How did they allow you to go there and take a picture of them and say that they don't exist? So if you receive the spam mail, it's actually a very emotive spam mail. They're asking for your help. They're struggling, they're dying, and you help them and you become a better person, and they even give you money. So why don't you do it? Why don't we all help the spam senders? Because we assume it's not true. But if you put an image, if you put a photograph, then it becomes an amazing research and documentary project. So I've been in Togo, in Sierra Leone, and I contacted these people. And yeah, and people still believe it's true, which is like kind of funny. So you can have a look at that in my website. And well, it was also funny, like this, for example, the places where I shot the things that didn't correspond at all with, this was in the surgery of the bullfighting arena in my hometown, and it's supposed to be in London in a very posh, so even at the exhibition, I did an installation to invite people to become the main characters of a spam, like to play the game as the main characters. And the spam was projected, so the text was projected in one of the walls, and everything was set so you could take a picture of yourself, and even like that, I was giving away everything, like, oh, this is amazing. How is Sierra Leone? I said, no, anyway. So, that reaction of people actually confirmed what I was thinking, and it helped me realize how important it was to actually raise a debate, at least for me, on how we consume images and how we need actually to educate the audience again, because otherwise it can become really dangerous. One of the bad effects of this is, for example, what happens with Africa. All the images, we are used to get images from Africa that assume that it's people, they just say that it's people that kill each other, that they die for different reasons, like starving, flooding, all kinds of disasters. But you never get a portrait of normal people in Africa who live happily, who go to work, who go to the market. You never get that other than in the travel agencies, magazines or things like that. So there's two different Africas, but there's no really a portrait of a normal African middle class person, and it exists. I mean, there's not only child soldiers there. So this is something I discovered when I was doing the spam series. It was my first time in Africa. It's not that I've been many times, as I'll explain later to you. But it was like, honestly, in a way, I was expecting something very tribal in Africa, and I was in Dakar, and I was not disappointed, but wow, this is not what I expected. So after 6 years being a photojournalist, I decided I wanted to quit my job, so I prepared myself, I save a little bit, and I decided to give myself 1 year of utopia. Like, let's pretend the world is perfect, let's pretend everybody understands me, let's pretend I can do whatever I want, it's going to be successful. Just for 1 year, then I come back to real life. And I was doing research again on these stories that are placed in the blurred border between fact and fiction, that is, stories that are real but nobody believes, like the Afronauts, or stories that are completely false that people tend to believe, like the spams. So I like to play on this area and find my subjects right there. I was doing research on that, just the way I do research is like I type freak, whatever. If I'm going to any place, I just type freak or strange or whatever, and that's when I found the stories in really weird websites. And doing this research, I came to a list of the 10 most crazy experiments in the history, and the first one was on the list was a certain Zambian space program, and I was like, wow, you know, you have these eureka moments, you have the light coming from the sky, it's like, oh, I found my subject. And actually, it was a very good subject for me because I didn't believe it at the beginning. It was like, no, this is impossible, it cannot be true. But then you see the images, I saw the video, and I was like, no, it's actually true. No, but it can be true. So I was, in a way, a victim of the game I wanted to play. And it was, this is perfect, not only because it has this potential with fact and fiction, but also because it was talking about Africa. And I think Africa is a very important subject that there's a lot to say about it. And I think I really wanted to give like a positive story coming from there, but not like the cheesy one and candid one, like, oh, they are happy. So actually use like these different layers of how we portray Africa to raise a debate on how we consume the images of Africa. So I'm gonna show you some images of the series, then I'll go through the PDF really quickly, but I just wanted to give some details on how I did the Afronauts. Well, I have no job, I quit my job, I have some money, not a lot, and I want to tell a story about an African space program that happened in the 1960s in Zambia. How do I do that? So I started doing just like the movie makers, like Star Wars was filmed in Libya or in Lebanon. Like, why can't I film the Afronauts in Spain? It looks very much like Africa. So I tried to really control the budget and cut the budget as much as I could, but it was not intentional, it was also because I needed to be fresh and do it quickly. So I just found locations, I asked my grandmother to do a spacesuit, and well, I explained you the details on all the costumes and so on. But I started like being in the mood of the Afronauts, and everything, lots of things in my routine reminded me and could be used to tell the story. This is, for example, a cement truck, you know, the ones that move. So it's an old one and can become a space trash thing. This is like, I did a public call on Facebook. I needed African models. So it's friends of friends of friends. He's actually a computer engineer and a professional handball player that lives in Alicante. I did, you know, the bubble, the helmet is a public light thing, a vintage one. And people ask me if I stole that. No, I bought it. It cost me 50 euros. And yes, well, I bought the African clothes in Whitechapel in London, and I went to Alicante with my grandmother. So I started, what images could I make? As I had been in Africa just 2 weeks doing another project. I'd never been to the space. I have no clue of what the space training can be. So I started using my cliché. I started documenting my cliché, how I would make out of this complete misunderstanding of what real things are. How do you explain? How would I explain to a child what an African space program is, maybe? And I started using the cliché, so the flag. Apparently some people say there's a flag with stars and stripes in the moon. So I did my own version of the stars and the stripes. Well, there's then real things in nature that can become aliens and that are strange, just if you see them in a different way. Elephants are really a strange animal. Really, if you get close to an elephant, it's like, oh, this is really alien. For example, this image is also funny because there's a lot of people who wrote to me like, oh yes, I really like your series, but on that image, it's an Indian elephant, it's not an African elephant. It's like, okay, there's an astronaut. Did you see the other shape? And that's a reaction because people always expect truth. So it's, oh, this is wrong. She's like making up everything. And no, everything is made up. It's just, don't worry. It's just a story. But it's a funny thing that they just see that it's an Indian elephant. So also, I had very little documents and I had very little information about what really happened. I had a few letters that I found on the internet of the Prime Minister, the Minister of Technology. I had like 3 documents in total. An article that Edward Makuka, who's the leader of the project, wrote in the Lusaka Times, and 2 letters from ministers who wanted to know what was actually happening. And that's all I had. All this and my imagination and what I expected from that. So I needed to really play the game and not to make just a beautiful series that could be fashion or that could be just art or whatever, because my intention is not to make beautiful pictures, it's actually to raise a debate and to force people to ask themselves if it's true or not. This is already a big achievement, and that is with that I'm already happy. So I created documents. I did, I'll show you afterwards in the PDF, but I needed documents to balance this. And I also needed a story. You cannot just have pictures. And you need a story, you need a narrative, you need to explain if they went, if they didn't go, if it was a good experience, if not. So I had to force myself. Actually, I think it's very close to what a movie director or a script writer can do. So there's a love story with the elephant. They say, bye. The love is impossible. So actually in the book there is this sort of narrative, but maybe if I have, maybe in a David Lynch way, not in a Spielberg way. So there's images like our cliches, like the footstep in the moon, and other images that are more poetic and that refer to like a broken wing, wanting to fly, not being able to. All these images that are more poetic in a way or more conceptual come from different projects I did. The wing was in Romania, in a beach. The first image of the cloud is in the Death Valley. And I just had a second look at all my archive to find images that work like a comma in the sentence that I was saying, because otherwise it was just action, just astronauts doing things, and I needed to stop the narrative, to stop the story, breathe, and we go on. So I was helped with that with Laia Abril, who helped me editing the book, and I'll talk later about the 2 persons that are really important in all this process. So I needed a rocket. I bought a toy house, a cardboard toy house, and I covered it in African fabric. My brother, who's a photo director in the movies, was doing a movie about a cosmonaut, and he just lent me a real cosmonaut suit that I turned into something more African. The model here is not even African, he's Brazilian, but it's fine. And this is images of my previous trip to Senegal. So I needed these magic things. This image, for example, in the book marks the difference. I mean, from this image on, you have just indoors, and then before that image is just outdoors, so we get into places. So it's this kind of thing. This image, for example, is have manipulated a few images, but just for the fun of it. This was an image of mosquitoes killed on the wall. There were many mosquitoes killed on the wall, but I just redesigned how they're killed to make the shape of a constellation. So it's like this domestic link to the cosmos. Like training, I mean, there's funny stories behind all these images, but I think you might be more interested in what happened next. So I'm going to go through all these. This, for example, is something that I used to see every day. This is actually a mountain that's behind my school in Alicante. There's a mountain like that, and there's this shape painted in white. It's something real. I didn't touch anything. So it was something that I saw every day for 10 years, and then I was like looking, what weird things can I add to this book? And this was definitely one. Yes?
Did you draw anything before you
Yeah. Yes, when I work like that, and even with the spam series, when there is, there's no reality, I have to create that reality. As I come from the drawing, I used to do comic books. That's what I did when I was studying. So I have a storyboard of everything, and the images look very much like almost exactly the same. So it's very easy if you know the image you want to create it. This, for example, I was with the Red Cross in Palestine, and I finished my work with them, and I rented a car and I went for a drive, and I arrived at the Dead Sea, and there was a group of Africans having a mud bath, and they started like showing off, like we were alone in the woods, like 15 Africans and me, and they started like showing the muscles and so on, and I decided they would become astronauts. But this is something that I found. It's not, even if I wanted to organize something like that, to have 15 Africans having a bath in the most strange sea in the world and then be there, it's something that I could not organize in my life, but then you find it. I think I'm kind of lucky finding things. Well, weird animals again. This, for example, I didn't make that alien. That's another question, together with the Indian elephant that comes. This is actually the diorama there is at the Alien Museum in Roswell. And I went there because I was curious in 2009, and I took this image like, oh, an alien. And I just used it afterwards. So yes, this image, for example, how is it? I'm not sure I can do it now because I really want to go fast. But if you turn it upside down, it is something floating on a lake. So there is no manipulation, it's just something that floats on a lake. You can see how this is like kind of this small waves. So I was in Italy, this was taken in Italy, and I was with my iPhone, and I said, oh, beautiful. I take the picture, and you actually realize that if you turn it upside down, it becomes a UFO. So that's the kind of manipulation I do, and that's the kind of things that I discovered I could do, and that make me really enjoy with the work now, much better than documentary. So they were training a cat. I did a spacesuit for the cat, too. He was not very happy, as you can see. Then these images, for example, I needed, you have this moon, the steppe, you have the flag, you have all this reference to Africa, and I needed badly all the typical images of space race that is the Houston headquarters, where they're all there with like communicating with the astronaut. And how do I do that? I really didn't know how can I build that. It's impossible. But I remember when I was at the newspaper that I went once to do the making of a movie in an abandoned factory. And I saw this place, and then I thought, oh, maybe. Well, when I went out of the place, going back to the newspaper, I realized that there was my cousin there. So after a couple of years, I just asked him, do you remember that place where I met you? And he told me that the guy was actually charging 6,000 euros to rent the place, but that he could give me the keys that night if I returned them the next morning. So I had like 12 hours to find 2 African models, to find everything and shoot by myself, and I was like kind of a thing to do because it was 7 a.m. and I had to find, yes, it was a very struggling thing for me. But anyway, so another of the big issues I had in terms of storytelling is how do I finish the story? Did they go? Didn't they go? Because I'm positioning myself also on what I expect from them. So I decided to finish the book, to use an image that could resume my big idea behind, which is like we all share this fascination for the cosmos. We all sometimes look at the stars and wonder if we are alone in this universe and so on. And that's something that we all have in common, regardless of the technical possibilities or economical possibilities we have to actually get to the moon. So I decided to finish the story with like not saying they went, not saying they didn't go, but just saying that everybody dreams, everybody can dream of going, which is actually the big thing. So I did a book. These are some of the images. I can show you the PDF. And well, when I finished doing this, well, actually before that, as I told you, I had quit my job and wanted to tell this story. And the same gallery that exhibited the Spam series wanted to do another show with me. So I proposed them to do the Afronauts. And I had no idea, no intention to do a book at the time, just the idea of doing the series. But when I was getting more and more images, I realized that I actually had to include drawings, all my drawings when I was preparing the series, and also all the documents I had found before. But when maybe 60 or 70% of the series was done, my gallery called me, and they told me, no, you cannot go with this story, we're not showing it, it's completely out of the market, and it's a step back in your language. So I was really disappointed. I was like, oh, I quit my job, and now my gallery doesn't like my job, my work anymore. It was, and then at the time I broke up with my boyfriend, everything was like really, really bad. So in reaction, the way I reacted is with some rage in a way, submit this work to all the competitions there were. I needed positive feedback. So I submitted the series to everything. And that in a way turned out to be a very good idea because it made the work very visible. I spent a fortune. But actually, I think all the curators in the US and all the photo editors in magazine saw the work before it became a book. That I think was something important when the book came. But I'm not sure. Someday I will know. Sometimes, well, I won a couple of competitions. And I know, for example, when I went to see the New York Times, I already knew the series, and everybody that was showing, oh, I know this series, and they knew it from being juries of competitions or things like that. Just the series, not the book. So in one of these competitions, it was actually like a festival in Spain, and it was more like a portfolio review. And a curator came because they do this in a very small university in southern Spain, in Cádiz. They have this program where they publish catalogs, and they invite a photographer to do a small exhibition, and they publish a catalog. So they gave me some money, just 2,000 euros, 2,500 euros, and a deadline. And a deadline is magic for me. You give me a deadline, and I do whatever you want. If I don't have a deadline, I just can't keep it. I need deadlines. So they gave me a deadline, and I say, okay, I need to do a catalog. But instead of doing a catalog, I already knew what it was. I say, no, I'm going to do a publication, a book that for me is the best way of telling the story. So I took that money, I did an exhibition that cost me 150 euros to produce. You can imagine how cheap it was really nothing. And I took all the money to invest it in the book. I started working then with 2 friends, Ramon Pezzarini and Laia Abril. Laia is another photographer, and Ramon is the art director of a magazine called Colors, that they are in Italy. And it was their first photo book too, my first, in a way, photo book. And we decided to self-publish because it was just a catalog, but just an elaborate catalog. And, well, the series was already visible, and I had a certain order in my mind, but Laia helped me to rearrange the images to adapt them to the form of a book. And Ramon found for me very clever solutions to solve some issues we had. For example, if you put, like, you see the page before, you have the image on the right. If it goes again in the right, and I want to do an insert, then I actually have a blank page, which is like really wrong for page number 2 in a book. So we started playing with formats, not allowing at any time to have a blank page. So we found these solutions. We also did a lot of research with the paper. The paper that, I have the book here. If anybody wants to see, just let me know. The paper we use for this is like a transparent paper. It's actually the paper they use to wrap the mozzarellas. It's a very cheap paper. The only big investment was the paper for the picture, which is like an expensive one. But for the rest, it was the cheapest paper we could find. Like this, for example, you would decide to cut and not do a center binding for the documents to break this blank page on the right. So Ramon came with very interesting ideas that turned the book into a beautiful object. And maybe because it's raw, maybe because it's easy, I don't know. It became an interesting book for book experts. And I printed a run of 1,000. The university kept like 350 for them, but the others, I sold them in 2 months, 2.5 months, maybe 3 months. I didn't understand what happened, and not only that, but I am now nominated for the book for big competitions and things like that, so it actually changed my life. But not only changed my life in terms of visibility and how my work is now considered, because now there's people who, visit my previous work, which is kind of interesting too, but also because it gave me the confidence to keep going. Like this was like a very personal challenge for me. Okay, I do things just the way I want. Let's see what happens without listening to anyone, not even my gallery, not even the people that I used to show the work to. Like actually when I showed the Afronauts, everybody told me to start again. Nobody liked it. Nobody, not a single person told me, do it. Not one. So it was like, yes. Yes, I was playing with things that I always wanted to do, like mixing collage and mixing drawings. Like there's this big Earth of the constellation everywhere in the book. You can find it if you spend time on it. You can download the book for free if you go to the PDF. You go to the university website, and you can also, now I did, because the book is very demanded, I did an iPad version for the iPad and iPhone version for the book, and it was a very interesting process for me to do, to find it, to experiment on a new platform and try to tell again the story using the potential of a new thing. And actually the size of an iPad is very much the size as this, so it was kind of easy. So, well, don't know if you know the book. That's the book. And I can give you details on other things that happen if you want, but maybe because I've been explaining these projects so often, I need to move on. And I'm going to show you the book that is outside being sold now, and what it is behind, because it is, well, when I started being so successful with the Afronauts, I started receiving a lot of proposals, like, I want to publish a book with you. And fortunately, I had a lot of ideas that I could not realize because I had no money or no time. So I started just producing the crazy ideas I had. And one of these was, well, I'm a fanatic of the movies, much more of than photography or books. I just love movies and comics. That's my passion more than photography, even if it's really bad that I say that, but it's true. So one of my favorite movies is West Side Story. Just because I always like musicals, because I think it's so weird that they are talking to each other and then they start singing and dancing. It's so fun. I mean, you think about it, it's like really fun. So when I was in New York, not the last time, when I was showing the Afronauts, the book, I was in New York for 2 weeks, and I really started, okay, I am in New York, I am a photographer, I need to take pictures. I mean, I have to take pictures, but instead of doing like straight photography, which is like kind of boring at this point, because street photography doesn't tell a story, it just tells other things, but for me it's not enough. I need to tell a story every time. So I started following like trying to document what I expected from New York. And what I expected from New York is people dancing in the street and people singing. It's the New York that they sell us. Like, so what I did is to try to find this New York when I was doing the pictures, and if I could not find it, to create that New York. So this is some shots of screenshots of the movie, and then the version I did. So the book is called, well, it doesn't have a title, but the series is Snap Fingers and Whistle, and it's a photo version of West Side Story. So I was actually asked, these images were not included in the book because they are too literal, but I show them to you so you can understand what I was doing at the time. So asking people, I was showing these images and then asking people to do that, which is a really funny way to spend your days in New York. I highly recommend it. So there's sometimes things happen, like this is staged, but this is real. There's a guy who's running after a basketball, and so it's half stage, half real. Well, these are the literal ones. Now I'm going to show you the PDF, and there's some funny things happening, especially at the end. I get in, oh, you don't see it here. So, yes, this is a book. So, I have to say that after self-publishing, working with an editor was sort of frustrating, but not a really bad experience after all. But I didn't have the complete freedom that I expected, and it was just like waking up from a dream. But it turned out well at the end, I think. So the book starts just like the movie. Well, actually, the book starts with 3 pages of colors, because the movie starts with 7 minutes of just color and the music. It's 7 minutes like that, and then the movie starts. So I wanted to translate that into the book. Then the view of New York. There's the confrontation of gangs. So there's, in some images, manipulation, in others not. For example, just manipulating for the fun of it. This is like the presentation of the Jets were Irish and Polish, so I just found this guy with his funny hair, and I cloned the hair, just because. For example, the book comes with an insert. It's the Jets against the Sharks in the movie. So the Jets is also a football team in New York. And I found a football team in New York that's named the Sharks. And it's a female football team. So I contacted them and I asked them to wear the uniforms and walk the streets of New York and take the pictures of them. So the Sharks and the Jets. There's some real street photography, the ones I already showed you. References to the movies and other things that could be seen as dancing, but you have to manipulate a little bit. There I erased the skateboard. The Maria song, I don't know if you're familiar with the movie. Actually, I think I really want people to watch the movie again. It's a great movie. So I did a book to force people. I remember when I was in Ibiza, I used to do a lot of parties, and one of the parties, I just invited all my friends. I say, let's come home, and normally it's like 80 or 80 people coming to the parties all the time. But this one that I said, okay, we can have a party, and then we watch West Side Story. And then just 5 people came, and it was like, nobody wants to watch the movie. So now I did a book to force the people watching the movie again. So that's the Maria song, using some weird aspects of New York to play with that. This is my version of I Like to Live in America. There's a lot of climbing in the book, some references to cinema lighting, but all these are real. It's not something that I staged. The killing, the hunting, problems of communications. So and sometimes it's a real literal translation of what happens in the frame. Yes?
You only use people for one frame?
Yes, it's people, it's random people I meet in the street.
You don't come back in others?
No. So this, for example, I had the same problem as with the Afronas. How do I finish the story? Because the end of West Side Story is quite dramatic. They find each other after a long drama, and just when they find each other and they kiss, he's shot and he's killed. So how do I do that? And do it really literally, I needed good actors, because otherwise you ruin everything and you realize that they are like, it's fake. So I was lucky and I found a couple of lesbians that were completely drunk in Madison Avenue. So I started following them, and I followed them maybe for 1 hour and a half or things like that. And at some point they kissed each other and she fell. So that is real, and it's not staged. It's something that really happened. So sometimes if you really just project what you need, it happens. And the end. And the credits come with like drawings on the wall and so on. So the book, I think it's maybe disappointing for people who didn't buy the Afronauts and really want something similar. But for me, it's the same idea. It's the same idea. It's just documenting what I imagine, but using not a documentary language, but the street photography this time. So for me, it makes a lot of sense. But I don't know. I haven't read any review yet. I really don't know. So other thing I can show you, just to finish, just 10 more minutes. The next book is this one. I am publishing it with RM, who's a Spanish publishing house, and the Archive of Modern Conflict. So when I quit my job, and I was, when I went to Palestine and so on, I did like a long trip, and I went to China because as everything fell down, I decided to go as far as I could, and China sounds always like very exotic. I go to China to forget everything. So I was in China with no real intention of documenting anything or following any story, just to be in China. I wanted to spend in China 3 months, and that's what I did. And at the end, I came back with a lot of images that are maybe just very personal in a way. I think it's the most personal work I'm showing, if there is any. And then again, as I'm receiving a lot of proposals to the books, I said, okay, I need to do something with the images from China. I really like these images. And I thought, okay, book China is this book. So I started to use this book as a structure to tell the story, which the story is mainly about what I think about China, what my impressions were about China, and with the contrast there is then this double standard, as it is formally a communist country, but practically a very aggressive capitalist country. So I just decided to give my own version of the Mao book, again using sense of humor and just highlighting what is still updated and what is still good, I mean, alive of communism. So I insert the images like that, and it will be a facsimile of the book, just a real reproduction, the same size and everything, and just with some images of mine inserted, and this manipulation of the text that is actually using a very typical Chinese technique that is censorship. It hopefully, fingers crossed, will be ready for Paris Photo. It's not been published, it's just a dummy. I need to go to China to finish the images. I'm going in August. So yes, this is like a preview. It's a scan of the dummy. I'm not sure it will be, I mean, I need to insert the images and so on, but just to explain to you what I'm working on. Yep. Yeah, this is from the, actually I think I have enough images to finish the book, but I think that maybe after publishing it I won't be allowed in China anymore, so I want to go to say goodbye. You think? Yeah? Okay. We tried to print the book in, really? I think so, I believe so. But we tried to print it in China and they say no. Yeah, it's completely different. So that's what happened before, what happened during, and what hopefully will happen next. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything. Thank you. questions. I explain it so good. Yes? I never got funds for my projects. I always fund them myself, but I really produce very low-cost projects. It's really cheap. I spend, other than in the book, like producing the images of the astronauts cost me maybe 600 euros.
But how do you live? I mean, how do you pay your rent, for instance?
Now, now I'm living with selling prints.
Okay.
Selling prints. But before the astronauts, I was doing some commercial work sometimes, and I was selling stories to magazines. I was a freelance photographer.
Okay, thank you.
Are you still with the gallery that rejected you?
No, they at some point, I mean, they were asking me for new projects, and I say, no, I'm still promoting, but now, like 6 months ago, like, do you have anything new? I say, no, don't you know it's been successful? Like, I have no time to think about anything new. And I didn't know what to propose them anyway, because if you don't think this is good, then it's just done. No, we don't talk to each other, sadly. Yeah, that's the bad part of all this. Yes?
You mentioned for both of previous projects that the story is very important, and what about the last book that is to be published? What, do you have any kind of a story or plot line that is taking place through the quotations? And yeah, how will it end? As it's an important question for all your works.
Well, this is actually a different project from the beginning, from why I did it and why it's becoming a book. It's completely different. There's no stories. It's just my opinion in a way. And I think it's a simple idea. It doesn't require a lot of, just understand it's an easy game again. But it has no story behind. It has no story. It's just, no, it's like building like a documentary object. It's like an object that documents what for me is China now, but there's no story behind. But I'm working on other projects that I cannot show you the images yet because I was shooting that last week with two more, like for example, I have two lines that interest me, like this one is another one. I've been, when I did the astronauts, this is like a very short insert. When I did the astronauts, one person came to me and told me that I really need to see the work of a certain Koyo Eshun. So what I do normally is I went to Facebook and I asked for friendship to Koyo Eshun to see what kind of person he is. And actually I asked for friendship to a different Koyo Eshun, to the wrong one. So I started, it's not an African artist based in London, he's actually a teacher in Ghana. But I started getting all this information that is normal information of normal people in Africa in a very, with no filters. Like, this is what is happening now, and I found it really, really interesting. So I started taking screenshots of his status updates, and after 1 year stalking him, I contacted him and I told him what I was interested in, and this is next year I will be working with that and trying to do the images in Ghana that document, maybe do like a sort of newspaper, where his status updates become the headlines, and I take the pictures of what happened. At some time, he falls in love, then he breaks, and so it's all his life documented during 1 year. So I have maybe these two lines that interest me, how we deal with the news, and how we deal with information via the news, and also how we have the cliches on certain places of the world, like in China, but and also the storytelling thing and the relation that I have with the movie. So there's two big lines. Sometimes they cross, like with the astronauts, and sometimes they just go on their own, I guess. No, this is not her. Yeah, so you can become friends with Koyo Eshun, and you get a very interesting point of view of Africa, normal one. More questions? Okay, thank you.